See? Mommy sewed the ear back on your woof-woof.
There are TV shows that simply fade away with time. And then there are those that refuse to die, shows that, like their own characters, seem to come back from the grave with a cult following that just won't let go. The Munsters is one of those legends. A bizarre Gothic family comedy that aired during the 1960s. It somehow managed to turn Munsters into America's most lovable sitcom household. But buried beneath its spooky charm lies a secret one particular episode that would eventually be pulled from television entirely, leaving fans wondering, what could possibly make a wholesome monster comedy so controversial? To understand how an episode of The Munsters ended up shrouded in mystery, you first have to go back to where it all began. The early 1960s were a golden age for family sitcoms, cheerful, safe, and all too similar. But CBS wanted something different, something that could rival the cultural wave of shows like The Addams Family. Thus, in 1964, The Munsters made its debut, blending classic monster movie aesthetics with a satirical take on American suburban life. At first glance, the premise sounded ridiculous. A Frankenstein father, a vampire mother, a werewolf son, and a sweet, non-monster niece, all living together in a creaky mansion on Mockingbird Lane. But that's exactly what made it unforgettable. Fred Gwynne, who played Herman Munster, quickly became the soul of the show, a towering, childlike figure who could make the audience laugh and ache for him in the same moment. Alongside him were Yvonne Carlo as Lily, Al Lewis as Grandpa, Butch Patrick as Eddie, and the ever-changing Marilyn, the normal one in the family. Together, they didn't just parody horror icons, they redefined what a sitcom family could be. Yet, as charming as their antics were, the show's creation came with a fair bit of controversy of its own. Few people knew that the concept for the Munsters had been floating around Hollywood long before it hit TV screens. Universal Studios, the same company that had built its legacy on monster films, had been developing the idea as early as the 1940s. But when the series finally emerged, the timing was awkward. Another network had just premiered The Addams Family, which featured a similarly spooky household, and the rivalry between the two shows was instant. Some even claimed that CBS had stolen the idea, and whispers of legal disputes and creative theft followed the show from the very start. It wouldn't be the last time that The Munsters would find itself caught between comedy and controversy. The show itself was a technical marvel for its time. Shot in black and white even after color television had started to dominate, The Munsters used dramatic lighting and old horror film techniques to make the characters pop. The sets were an art piece, cluttered, dark, and dripping with macabre charm. But beneath the laughs and gags, the series was filled with tiny details that only eagle-eyed fans would catch, props and inventions recycled from Universal's classic horror films, laboratory gadgets from Frankenstein, and even Grandpa's bubbling lab equipment that once appeared in Bride of Frankenstein. The show was, in many ways, a love letter to the very monsters it parodied. And then came that episode, the one that would eventually vanish from syndication and live in infamy. The episode in question didn't contain violence, profanity, or scandal. What it had, instead, was something far trickier satire that struck too close to home. Titled My Fair Munster, the storyline toyed with the idea of beauty standards and human manipulation, echoing social experiments that were controversial at the time. Lily and Grandpa attempt to create a love potion to help poor Marilyn find romance. But their scientific meddling spirals out of control, causing chaos throughout Mockingbird Heights. What was meant as harmless, comedy took an unexpected turn when viewers and network censors began questioning the episode's undertones, suggesting that the show had crossed a subtle but dangerous line in its portrayal of consent and emotional manipulation. The producers initially brushed off the complaints, but when the network's standards department reviewed the episode, they decided to pull it from reruns. It wasn't banned in the traditional sense of being outlawed, but it was quietly buried, left out of syndication packages and TV rotations for decades. Ironically, this act of suppression only made the legend grow. Fans whispered about a lost episode, one that was too inappropriate for its time, giving the Munsters a layer of intrigue that few family comedies could ever claim. But controversy didn't stop there. Behind the laughter, the production faced constant struggles. Yvonne de Carlo had originally been hesitant to join the series, worried that a campy monster comedy might damage her career as a serious actress. Yet, her performance as Lily Munster became one of the show's defining features, elegant, sarcastic, and endlessly patient with Herman's blunders. Fred Gwynne, for all his charisma, battled discomfort inside the heavy makeup and prosthetics that transformed him into Herman. The process took hours, and the thick costume was brutally hot under studio lights. Still, Gwynne powered through every episode with the energy of a stage actor, delivering lines that would make Herman one of the most beloved television dads of the decade. Grandpa, played by Al Lewis, provided a different flavor of humor altogether. His eccentric inventions and snarky remarks gave the show an edge that separated it from other sitcoms. It wasn't unusual for Grandpa's experiments to accidentally blow up, release smoke, or summon creatures which delighted audiences but frustrated the crew working behind the scenes. The special effects department worked tirelessly to pull off the illusions that made the Munsters' home come alive. In fact, many of the lab props were borrowed directly from Universal's archives, linking the Munsters to the golden era of horror cinema. As the show's popularity grew, so did its cultural footprint. Kids dressed up as Herman and Grandpa for Halloween. Toy companies rushed to license every possible collectible, from lunchboxes to comic books. Even the family car, the legendary Munster coach, designed by George Barris, and the infamous Dragula, a real coffin turned hot rod, became icons in their own right. But while the show's popularity soared, storm clouds were forming behind the scenes. Television was changing. By 1966, audiences were moving toward color programming, and the Munsters, still filmed in black and white, began to feel dated. Competing shows like Batman exploded onto the scene with bright costumes, wild camera angles, and colorful villains that captivated young viewers. Despite strong fan loyalty, the Munsters couldn't keep up with the new trend. When CBS tried to transition into color, the costs skyrocketed, and that's when executives decided to end the show after just 2 seasons. The cancellation shocked fans, but the family from Mockingbird Lane refused to die quietly. After the show ended, the Munsters lived on through films, spin-offs, and endless reruns. The 1966 movie Munster, Go Home was shot in color, finally revealing the eerie beauty of the character's green skin and ghoulish makeup that audiences had only imagined. Yet even then, that banned episode continued to haunt discussions among fans. Was it really too controversial? Or was it simply a product of its time, a playful joke that modern audiences would hardly blink at today? Some insiders have hinted that the censorship might have been more about the network's image than the content itself, as CBS was particularly cautious about anything that might be misconstrued as inappropriate family messaging. Still, the Munsters achieved something rare. It made the macabre lovable. The show wasn't mocking monsters. It was humanizing them. It told viewers that being different wasn't something to hide, but something to laugh about and celebrate. Herman's big heart, Lily's elegance, and Grandpa's manic energy made them relatable in a way that transcended the makeup and fangs. They were a family like any other, just with a few extra cobwebs. As the decades passed, the Munsters found new life with each generation. Reboots came and went, from the short-lived The Munsters Today in the 1980s to Rob Zombie's 2022 remake, each one trying to recapture that peculiar blend of humor, heart, and horror that made the original so special. But no matter how many reimaginings came after, nothing quite matched the original's charm. That black and white world where the monstrous was mundane and the ordinary was strange captured something timeless. So why does that one banned episode still matter today? Because it's a reminder that even light-hearted art can stir discomfort when it mirrors society too closely. The Munsters was never meant to shock. It was meant to hold up a funhouse mirror to the world, showing us that the things we fear are often just reflections of ourselves. And in that reflection, even if it made the censors uneasy, was a quiet brilliance that made the Munsters unforgettable. When you strip away the laughter and the makeup, the Munsters was never about monsters at all. It was about family, acceptance, and love that endures in the most unlikely forms. The fact that one of its episodes was hidden from view only adds to the myth proof that even the kindest monsters sometimes have stories the world isn't quite ready to hear.